Hello, I'm over here with Lawana Balance, who recently adopted two girls, Lily age 6 and Piper age 5. Before adopting them, both of these girls had been in the foster care system, and she was their foster parent for about 1.5 years. To get more information about what this experience was like, I'm going to ask her a few questions. Thank you for coming, Lawana.
You're welcome.
What steps did you go through to become a foster parent, and was this process what you expected?
Well, I have a friend of mine that does foster parenting, so I started kind of asking her about what I would have to do and stuff, and she connected me with a social worker with the agency that she works with. So I contacted the social worker, and she said, well, the first thing is we have to make sure that you have a home that qualifies. So she made an appointment, came over and looked at our house and said, yeah, your house, qualifies, without any major changes. Then she said that we would have to be doing some paperwork, so we filled out an application, and it just kept seeming like I would do stuff, and then I would think, okay, I did everything you asked me to, and then she'd give me more stuff to do, and more stuff, and more stuff. And she started asking me all these questions I had to fill out about myself, like my childhood, about how my parents raised me, like discipline issues, questions like abuse, like, alcohol, things like that. So literally I felt like I wrote a book about myself, so that they have that on file so anyone can look at that file and know what I'm like. Also, Mike had to do the same thing too. So between the two of us, it seemed like it took probably about 4 or 5 months to really get all this paperwork done. And then at that point, they could place a child with us. But placing the child was kind of interesting too, in that, she calls you up and said, hey, you want this 10-year-old boy? And I could say yes or no, or, I just thought it was kind of interesting how it was when they placed the child with me. So, but all in all, it took quite a while to get all that done.
Is it longer than you expected?
Yeah, I would say quite a bit longer, because my friend, she's like, oh, it's quick, you only have to do this little bit. But the thing of it is she's been a foster parent for a long period of time, and the process had changed in the meantime. So we had to actually do extra paperwork in case we wanted to adopt, versus she hadn't done all that extra paperwork. The agency was just now applying those new rules. So she kept saying, what's taking so long? And I'd be like, I don't know. So yeah, it definitely took a long time. But once the paperwork was done, then, if we decided to adopt, it was all done. I didn't have to do anything else.
Why did you want to become a foster parent?
Well, we have 4 children, and Mike and I really like kids. I mean, I work with kids, he works with kids, we're both Sabbath school teachers, and our kids were gone, and our house was empty, and it was very quiet. And I've actually thought about being a foster parent in the past, just because I feel like there's a lot of kids out there that need, good parents that care about them. So just, we started talking about it, and it just seemed like it filled up an empty spot in our house. We have a pretty big house, and it was very empty without kids here at this house.
So when you first started being a foster parent, did you think that you were going to adopt?
Absolutely not. The thought was like, people would ask me, and I'm like, no. No, we'll just be foster parents. And it was kind of like, we'll foster kids, they can stay as long as they need to. Just definitely not going to adopt. And that's not how the story ended, though.
Alright. What would you say is the hardest part about being a foster parent, or what challenges did you face?
Which challenges did I face? Well, we had several different foster kids. The first foster child we had was a girl that was 9, and I'd say the biggest issues with her were with eating. Like, she only wanted junk food. She, every time we would drive past fast food, she would have a meltdown wanting to go have McDonald's. Dinner time was always a huge issue because she didn't like the food. She didn't want to eat the vegetables. The only vegetable she would eat was broccoli. And I was like, well, we can't have broccoli every day. We also had a couple of boys, brothers, that were very challenging. The older one was autistic, a little bit, so we had that to deal with. And the younger one, he would just bash his head constantly. Like, his head was literally covered in big lumps and bruises. He would just bash it on the floor, bash it on the chairs, hit it on the wall. He did that like all day long, day and night. He'd wake up in the night, start hitting his head. It was at the point where I wasn't sleeping hardly at all. He was very difficult to get to sleep at night. So Mike would kind of have to hold him and rock him, get into bed, and then I would stay in the room with him. Every time he would wake up, he'd start bashing his head, and I'd just kind of pat him like, okay, try to get him back to sleep. So that was very challenging because I had very little sleep during that period of time. The older boy was very violent. He was trying to hurt me all the time, throwing rocks at the dogs and at the windows, trying to run away all the time. And I will say, having those 2 boys was probably the biggest challenge I've ever faced in my entire life. And it was at the point of breaking down, like, I can't do this, I am not meant to do this. The younger boy, also a challenge was he couldn't talk at all, so he was mentally pretty slow, and so he couldn't express any of his wants. So, if he's crying, I didn't know, are you hungry, or were you just tired, And I would say, you ready to eat? And he didn't know what that meant. Like, eating, the word eat didn't mean anything to him. We actually only had those boys for 9 days. Mike ended up staying home from work because it was not something that one adult could handle. And we just, realized that this is definitely not going to work out for our family. And so we had to end up calling the social worker and having them placed somewhere else. They needed to be in a place where it was more like a group home, where they would have, day staff and night staff, so that it wasn't just on one person, because you couldn't stay up 24 hours a day, to take care of them. But it was very tiring, and I felt like a big failure at the time, and that was definitely challenging for me. But I would say that that's kind of not the norm. I mean, I know there are a lot of very difficult kids, but there's also rewards and children that are not difficult like that.
What would you say is some of your best experiences, and why would someone else want to consider becoming a foster parent?
Well, there's lots of good experiences we have had. Before we had the current girls that we adopted, we had a couple other girls too. They were just, you just love them. They become like your own kids, and just have so much fun with them. It's kind of like, I miss being a parent, so it's just that whole interaction, and just, to see them change, Lily and Piper, when they first came to live with us, Lily couldn't really talk. So just to see how far they've come, Lily was very insecure. She wanted to hide in her bed all the time. Piper had huge anger issues where she was just screaming and having tantrums constantly, every single thing. And just to see how far they've come. I mean, these girls are so smart. I mean, they're both at the top of their class, just learning, and they're happy, and they love you, and it's just amazing to see the change in them. And, and I feel like definitely something I wanted to do, to help the community. And, you see all the hurting, sad children. Going back to the boys, the situation that they came from was just absolutely horrible. It's unbelievable, some of the situations that they were in, and just very eye-opening. And the fact that I'm able to do something to help that is very much a reward.
Thank you, Luana. I've learned a lot about what it's like to be a foster parent today.